Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So this is round 7 of the Melbourne Chess Club Classic Swiss, and I paired up against Xavier Hong. Now he's a junior player in Melbourne, and I didn't do any specific preparation because actually, at least I didn't make any useful preparation because he plays a lot of different openings. I saw on his chess.com account, so I really didn't know what to expect coming to this game. And before the game started, he actually said that he knows of my YouTube channel. And so I was thinking already, like he might know some of my videos. And so, yeah, let's just go into the game. I started with e4, and then he replies with c6. And now I'm already faced with the decision here. I have a video series on the advanced Caro-Kann, and I did not like revise that before this game, and so I wasn't like 100% confident. And in hindsight, I should have like just went into my normal openings, but I was a bit afraid, to be honest. And before this round, in the afternoon, something pretty personal and pretty bad happened, so I wasn't in the mood to play. So I just decided on the spot to play knight c3, and then after pawn to d5, I play knight f3. So this is the two knights attack. Now, I don't think it's the best opening, to be honest, because black has many ways to equalize, in my opinion. One of them is what he played in the game, and the second one is a simple bishop g4. And after h3, the line goes takes, so it's best to give up the bishop, because if they go for bishop h5, then this is a very well-known line here. White can play g4, play bishop b5 check. After knight c6, play knight e5, rook c8, and then put the pawn to d4. And I know that white has a very nice advantage in this position, which is why bishop takes f3 is best. And then after this sequence, black just plays e6 and has a completely fine position, in my opinion. But instead, the other way to play is to take on e4, knight e4, then knight f6. And now the idea behind the two knights attack is this move queen e2. And after they take on e4, because if they play knight bd7, then knight d6 is checkmate. So that's like the one trap that black shouldn't fall into. And obviously I know that my opponent isn't gonna fall for it. I play queen e2 because this is theoretically the best. And after knight takes e4, queen takes e4, knight d7, bishop c4. So I'm just going based off my old experience, because I used to play the two knights attack, but eventually I moved on to the advanced variation. And so yeah, I'm just using my experience. Knight f6, knight e5. And so there's a threat of checkmate right now, and that's why the queen cannot be taken. So e6, and then the queen returns back. Now in this position, I know that there are like a couple of moves. I know that the idea of playing bishop d6, and then castling, and then playing queen c7, let's say after pawn to d4, castling, queen c7, prepares the move c5. And I know that black is completely fine in this position. However, I thought that, I don't want to fall into any of his preparation that he may have in the advanced variation, so I allowed this. But he surprised me here already with the move b5. It's because I've never seen this move before. Yeah, normally people play bishop d6 and the queen c7, but this is like a revelation to me that this could be played. And already I make a terrible mistake in this position. I take on c6. Now, what I should have done is that actually after the game, I researched this and I found that there are two moves for white. They're both quite crazy. The more tame one is to play the move bishop b3, and then after queen c7, just play the move d4. And then after bishop d6, white can either castle or play this move a4 to undermine the structure. And the thing is that black can just ignore it and just play using the diagonals opened up after we've taken this pawn. So after ab5 takes, black can even play this move a5. Now the pawn is defended twice, so it can't be taken, and the threat is bishop a6, and so this is quite annoying. And so theory goes queen c6, and keep in mind that I don't know this like during the game. I didn't know this at all, but this is just what analysis has shown. And then after bishop e7, black is going to win back the pawn on g2 and get a completely fine position. And I didn't know this during the game, but it's very much possible. And the other idea is to play the move bishop d3. Now, the problem with this move is that it does not allow the pawn to go forward, but it puts additional pressure onto the b5 pawn, meaning that once a4 comes, and if we take over here on b5, then we can take with the bishop and make the queen not so vulnerable. And so the line goes queen c7, and note that this line has been tried like a dozen times at least by grandmasters. And after a4, bishop d6, knight takes c6. So this is one of the key points. They cannot take because of bishop b5, winning the queen. And then after b4, knight d4, a6, preventing knight b5. White can play knight f5 here, and play is really crazy. For example, one line that I've examined is bishop e5, knight takes on g7, king f8, knight h5, takes, and then black just gets tremendous compensation for 2 pawns. Even though it looks like, like black's king is kind of unsafe, but it turns out that they can actually make use of this g-file, and theory says, or the computer says, that queen h4 is the best move. And if they take on g2, then I guess we can play rook g1. And after rook g8, bishop takes h7, rook g2, d4, and then bishop g7. The computer assesses this as equal, which is completely like wild, and something I was not ready to go into. But that kind of shows. I mean, it's something that I definitely learned after this game, that b5 is a playable move. But yeah, I play the move knight takes c6 here, and now the problem is that black should play queen c7 here, and I cannot take on b5 because of bishop d7, but I can play the move bishop d3. Now if they take on c6, then I can take on b5, winning the queen. But black can just play a6, solidifying the pawn, and get a lot of tempi. For example, after knight e5, they can play knight d5, threatening knight f4, which would be really annoying. And if I play g3, then bishop b7, and the long diagonal is totally weak. And so this position's already really good for black. However, my opponent plays queen b6, and now that's quite different. Because what I can play here is actually the move bishop d3, and after bishop b7, knight e5. Now the b5 pawn is hanging, and taking on g2 would lose a pawn, and so black still has a lot of compensation with this bishop on this diagonal. However, there is not so much pressure on the knight on e5. For example, if the queen was on c7, so then they can play bishop d6 and pressure the knight further. So that's an improvement over the move that my opponent made. However, in this position, I was like completely out of it, and I just decided to take on b5. I thought I was losing already after knight takes c6, but this move is just clearly losing a piece because they play bishop d7, and I can't retreat my knight anywhere where it will defend the bishop and not be taken. And so I'm in damage control mode right now, and I thought, okay, I know I'm losing, but I need to go for this. I take a pawn, rook takes a7, bishop d7, rook takes d7, and then c3. So I prepare d4. And let's just play a couple more moves like bishop d6, normal development, castles, d4. And now I know that I'm completely lost here, because despite having 3 pawns for the piece, these pawns are not mobile. They're very far from mobile, actually. Black has a beautiful square on d5 to make use of the f4 square, for example. And the bishop on c1 really needs, if it needs to stay here kind of like to defend the b2 pawn. Otherwise, I'm going to need to use another piece to defend the pawn. And so I know that I'm lost here, but I'm just like, okay, let me just play on. And my opponent plays rook c8, which is quite a good move. Controlling some of the light squares here. Like, for example, I think that if black gets in like the move queen c4 or something, just to take control of all of the light squares, and just stops the pawn from mobilizing forever, then it becomes really tough for white. So I play rook d1 here, and now the threat is to play c4. I mean, I need to play for something, so I defend the pawn on d4, so I'm threatening to play c4. After bishop e8, I guess this kind of opens up the rook's eye. Makes some sense. I play bishop g5 because I can't really put my bishop anywhere else. If I put it on e3, then knight d5, trade some pieces. And so bishop g5 here. I don't exactly want to take because I'm down material, but I just want to put the bishop on a secure place. And after knight d5, seeing that they're threatening bishop f4 to trade some pieces, I'm forced to play g3. And luckily there is no light squared bishop, and so I do have, at least that's the hope, is that my king is gonna be okay. But they play rook b7, which is nice to attack the pawn, and then I play c4 here. So I need to do something, and yeah, I mean the knight coming back to e7 is completely fine, I think, but I will just play b3 and I'll hope for the best in that kind of position. But I do think that knight e7, like b3, knight f5 would be quite annoying because d4 is very weak, and so I'm like forced to play d5 and something like rook d7. Not too sure, like it looks quite dangerous for white because the center is overextended now and it's being undermined. So that would have been good, but instead my opponent plays queen a6, after which I need to defend the pawn somehow, and so I can't play b3 on account of knight c3. So I play rook d to c1, which, you know, I know I'm losing still, but just keep playing. And then f6. And here I saw that f6 was possible. The point is that if I retreat my bishop anywhere, like for example on d2, the b2 pawn will be taken. On e3, it will just be traded. And on h4, it will just be trapped with g5. And so here I saw this move and I thought, okay, queen g4, very nice. First off, like unpinning the queen from this pin, threatening cd5 and putting pressure on e6. And there's also like possible x-ray on this diagonal. However, I did calculate that black is completely winning here after knight e7, bishop f6, knight g6, which I kind of expected, and then bishop g5, and then rook c4. So this one I expected, but I thought I had to go for h4, try to get some counterplay with h5. And yeah, just going a bit back actually, instead of knight g6, turns out knight f5 is really strong. The point is that I can play bishop e5, but they'll just trade and then take on b2. And so if I play b3, then they can play h5. Now if I take, clearly I'm just gonna lose the bishop, right? And so if I play queen g6, or I don't know, like queen g5 also possible, but queen g6, let's say, they can play rook f7. And now if I retreat the bishop to g5, let's say, then they can play knight takes d4. And I'm completely lost here. There's a threat of knight f3 and knight e2, and now my light squares are completely exposed here. Like, yeah. So I think knight f5 would have been like an easy way to win, but instead my opponent plays knight g6, which is more human, I think, because you're unbreaking the pin immediately. And after bishop g5, they took on c4. And then I played h4, threatening h5, but not really because the knight can just go to e5. And here I saw a very nice trick. They played knight e5, and I was kind of happy to see this because I thought they would blunder this following trick. Queen e4, rook takes d4. And now I was getting my hopes up because first off, I cannot take on d4 because of knight f3 check, winning the queen. But I saw that this rook is no longer defending the back rank, and so I play rook c8 check, forcing the king to come out, and then I took on h7. And then I was like, oh wait, this is not so simple anymore. I thought that I was even close to winning with this attack because the king is so exposed. But I think my opponent should have played queen e2, just bring the queen more active. I think this is the best move objectively, but what can get a draw here after takes, king h7, and then repeating this kind of position. So I mean, if I found that, then I would have definitely played it. But my opponent played a more tempting knight f3 check. And now the problem is that after king g2, attacking the knight, and knight takes g5, I don't need to take on g5 because that would give black a crucial tempo. Instead, I play the move queen h5 check. And now that if they step onto the dark squares, then I can take on g5 with check. Now, if they play g6, which was what happened in the game, I don't even take the knight. I play queen h8, which threatens queen f8 checkmate. And so this becomes really dangerous, and I think this is already losing, objectively. I'm also attacking the rook. And so they play the only move queen d6, covering the f8 square and defending the rook. And then I play h6 g5. And now there's a threat here of queen f6. And so my opponent plays queen d5 check. And then I'm forced, if I go to the back rank, then I was afraid that they could just give a check. So I step to h3. And here I really thought that my opponent would go for a perpetual. But I was actually very lucky here, king g2, queen d5 check, and then seeing that if I go to h3, it's gonna be a draw, clearly. And if I step to here, then this is gonna be worse because they have this counter sacrifice, or just a sacrifice, bishop takes g3, ripping the king open. And if I take, then g5 is gonna drop. I'm gonna get checkmated. And if I take with the f pawn, then rook d2 would just be crushing. And so I can't step to h2, so I'm forced to go to f1 if I want to avoid the draw. Seeing that the black king is so exposed, and I might win actually, despite the horrible opening mistake. But after rook d1, takes, king g2, queen d5, I played this move. I saw this move, f3, only in this position, and now did I realize that the b2 pawn was defended by the queen, and so rook takes b2 cannot be played. And I'm still threatening queen f6 as well as queen f8 checkmate. And so black has no moves here. For example, queen d2, I just stepped up to h3 and there are no more checks. And I'm still threatening two ways of mating. And so black saw nothing better to do than just to sacrifice the rook in desperation, just to lure the queen away. And then they play bishop e5. And now I know that I'm completely winning by a miracle, actually. But yeah, I tried to compose myself and just thought, okay, it's not that easy. I just need to convert this. So I play the move queen e2. And then after bishop d6, I see that my g5 pawn is hanging, and if g5 falls, then they're putting pressure on g3. And so I play this move rook c4, prepared to swing the rook over to defend the g3 pawn. And so after takes, rook g4, queen d5. Now I play the move queen c2, just being a bit annoying, pressuring the g6 pawn. And then after g5, I play the move a4. And now if this pawn was not on the board, then I think it would be a pretty simple draw. Because without this, then it's going to be hard to target black's weaknesses, because the bishop on the dark squared bishop can always defend this pawn, and the king is quite safe here. So luckily I have this outside pass pawn, and then after king g7, queen b2 check, bishop e5, because okay, I mean they could go to h7 here, very much possible, but I think I would just continue with let's see, queen b7, rook, even maybe queen d4. No, there's queen e2, so I don't know, maybe queen c2 check, king g7. Yeah, I would have continued some way definitely, but bishop e5 looks natural. However, it just loses on the spot to rook takes g5, king f6, and then I simplify down to winning endgame, because so my opponent resigned here, but what ends up happening is that I can just push, let's say g4, and he needs to stop this pawn, and while they're doing that, I can just push the g pawn. So a massive turn of events, similar to like round 2, where I shouldn't have won, but I did win. So yeah, it's that kind of shows like how brutal these kind of tournaments can go. But yeah, I learned a lot from this game, and my opponent was very gracious after the game. And yeah, I just hope I don't play any more bad chess going forward, like this game. I know it's kind of difficult, but this level of play is kind of like unacceptable in my opinion. Anyways, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please comment down below if you liked the video and you want to see a certain topic, opening or otherwise. Thanks for watching. Bye.